I am Jeff Rader, one of the co-founders of Harry's, and I'm here with fashion icon, entrepreneur, mom, Rebecca Minkoff. Rebecca, it is awesome to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, thought we might just start out with a couple of short sort of icebreaker-like questions.
Perfect.
All right, first, what is your morning routine and what was your routine this morning?
My morning routine, I try and sleep as long as possible with 2 kids. You never know what time it's going to happen. So It started at 7. My husband got home at 8 from the gym, so he said go back to sleep, which was awesome.
What's your favorite curse word? That's a good one. I
'Cause
feel
you
like
can
that's
really-
the mother of all curse words.
It is. And you can really get a lot of emphasis with the F.
Yeah, that's true.
The problem-
And the CK at the end.
Yeah,
you can
that's
also
true.
emphasize.
I tend to do the first, the F, you know?
So maybe we could take a step back and talk about, I mean, we're talking to college kids, so
Yes.
maybe talk about you in college or even before. And you started an amazing fashion brand and you worked in fashion before. Why did you think about going into this crazy, highly competitive world of fashion?
I didn't think about it, which I guess is a blessing. But every area of life that you want a career in is competitive.
And at what point in time did you get excited about fashion? Like, when did you know that it was something that you really wanted to do?
I got excited when really in high school. I'd been sewing since I was 8, but in high school I really took matters in my own hands and I was making costumes, designing them for the school and making a lot of my own clothes. And that's when I got the bug.
Yeah, and what do you think sort of in your background or what influenced you to start sewing and to begin with? And
My mom being cheap. I wanted a dress, she said no, but I'll buy you the fabric and I'll teach you how to sew it.
you started sewing, then you started making your own clothes and clothes for school. What kinds of clothes were you making for school? Like for school plays and stuff?
Yeah, so I was in the costume department.
Got it.
Basically at my school was a performing arts high school, so rather than have electives.
Where was this?
In Florida,
Cool.
in St. Petersburg. Rather than have electives, you had 4 hours a day of whatever your chosen major was.
And now fast forward to launching your own line.
Yes.
What happened in between that made you say, okay, I want to take all the talent that I have and actually do it for myself?
Well, I moved to New York when I was 18 to work for a designer. So it was a paid internship, so I could live barely, but live. And I did that for a year, and she really had me focus on every area of the business. So I was in the shipping department, sales, cutting swatches, picking up the CEO's son, you name it, I did it.
What was it like being 18 years old, living in New York,
It was
having a job,
lonely.
having to pay?
It was lonely. I feel like it takes anyone who moves here a year to figure things out. But it was exciting. I mean, it was like been a dream of mine to move to New York and be a designer. So the fact that, I had not an easy introduction, but I got an internship and then they hired me was a nice sort of segue. And then I worked there for 3 years. So by the time I left, she kindly fired me. She said, "You're ready." I was 21. She was like, "You're ready to start your own thing. Go do it."
You're 21, living in New York.
So I guess it was fortuitous timing in that I had been in the Caribbean previous that spring and made a shirt. Took a I Love New York shirt, cut it up, bedazzled it, which was a big trend at the time, and gave it to my sister-in-law. She wore it to dinner. There's actors on the show that none of these kids will know. Dharma and Greg wore it, or liked it and ordered it. So I shipped it to her on 9/9. She got it on 9/13, and she wore it on Jay Leno. So he asked about the shirt. 9/11 obviously was like on everyone's mind. She said my name, and I was contacted within the hour by Us Weekly, and they were like, "We want to feature the shirt," and I was like, "I'm giving all the money to the Red Cross." And that momentum, I think Us Weekly featured it 4 times, and then Lucky Magazine featured it, and then all these websites were just talking about it over and over again. So I literally for 8 months, I just made those shirts. I would go to Canal Street on my bike, negotiate with a dude, bike back home, watch terrible soap operas, which I hate, and just cut the shirts up, tie knots, for 8 months straight.
And what made you decide to give all the money away? I know it was a crazy time in history.
Yeah.
But what gave you the idea just to give all the money away?
I think a couple things. One, that I was so close to where it happened. It was also really scary. But also I was one of the first groups let down there to volunteer. So I was down there for 3 days just volunteering and setting up the triage. And to be that close to it and see the destruction and the damage and really feeling it was like the end of the world, I think just you can't you can't not do something.
So how do you turn these shirts into this amazing brand?
So like I said, these stores had a familiarity with the name. So as a follow-up to sort of the shirts, I contacted several stores in New York City and a website, which e-commerce was a really new crazy thing back then. So what I would do is I'd send the clothing over, then I'd go home, print some postcards on my shitty printer, and go stand out in Union Square and be like, there's this new designer, Rebecca Minkoff, check her out. And I would do that.
Would you say it as yourself, like I'm Rebecca Minkoff?
No.
There was some, Rebecca Minkoff was like behind the curtain.
And as that slowly grew, a girl took notice and she said, you know, I want to sell your line, you just have to pay me a commission. So she and I, with 2 crappy suitcases, would go on the road, and she had some relationships with stores, and she'd sell the line, and then between myself and another sewer, we'd make it.
And why did you choose to call it Rebecca Minkoff? I mean, I know it's obviously your name and who you are, but was that a conscious choice that you made, or were you like, hey, I made these, like, they're from me?
I just felt like if I'm going to put everything into this, it's going to be my name, A, and B, when you look at companies that exist and have longevity, I feel like it's always going back to, you know, I am me, and I think the customer can identify with a person versus just a name.
Yeah. And what do you think of as the values of the brand? Like, what does Rebecca Minkoff stand for as a company?
I think what it stands for as a company is, you know, we call it our lane, is really this, you know, our customer is 27, you know, I would say she's a millennial for sure, but we always say she's 27, and we always have to worry what is, she's never getting older, right?
Let's go back to this period of time. So you've been doing this for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
You are making products yourself still,
Yes.
serving as the marketing, finance, PR, and design function of the business. And what was going through your head at that point in time? You're like, wow, I've been doing this for a long time. What did success look like for you then? How were you just thinking about this business that you were trying to build?
I was there was never a failure in my eyes, but I didn't see it getting better. It was also getting to the point where my business was growing slowly, and it was growing, but I couldn't also manage it all. So that is when I had called my dad, and I was like, would you be willing to help me? And he was like, no, I'm good. But call your brother and he might. So that's the beginning of the relationship that started, where my brother was in Florida, he had a software company, he was planning on doing that for the rest of his life, and then I entered the picture. And that's when he said, do you have an LLC? Do you have a tax ID number? Are you incorporated? All these things that I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I don't know where to go to do any of that.
Yeah, and how did you convince him to help you?
The thing that sort of set him over was the same girl that had come to me about the shirt in 2004 said, would you design a bag for me for a role in a film? And I said, sure. And I had no idea how to design bags. Shipped it to her. FedEx didn't deliver it on time, so it didn't make the movie. I made 2 samples. So she had one and I had one. And enough people stopped me on the street that I was like, oh, people really like this bag. It's like causing a reaction in a way that my clothing maybe never had. This buyer from a store in LA saw it. She was a friend of mine. She said, I love it. I want to order for the store, and I'm going to tell another friend of mine who writes for Daily Candy, which was the only social media. Yeah. There was no Twitter, there's no Facebook, there's no Instagram. There's e-commerce is like something that's just starting. So she wrote about it, and she said, you need a name for your bag. And I was like, oh, I do. And I didn't want to call it a girl's name because a lot of other brands are doing that. And I was like, it's the morning after bag. A girl and her handbag have a relationship, and they go places together. And she can identify key moments in her life, you know, by the bag she had. So why not, you know, start a brand or rebrand as a company that's like with these firsts or with these fun experiences or about love. And that's something I was going on in my life at the time. So I named it the Morning After Bag, and when it was sent out, it was like wildfire. Like, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but to get an order for 70 bags is huge when you've been making one.
And so tell me about the Morning After Bag. What do you think made that bag so special?
Girl could get a great bag, high quality, felt like it was designer, but it wasn't blasted all over with a logo. It was affordable and unique. So the same friend that bought the bag originally for the store Satine in LA, Satine decided to start a showroom and represent designers. So they chose me as one of them.
And it feels like these relationships are so important. There's other people who can help enable your business. How did you develop these relationships and then convince them to help you?
I think that your relationships are the most valuable currency you could have, especially when you don't have a lot of money. Because if you get people to believe in your vision and sign on and help, then that helps carry you forward. And I think my brother and I were really good at, showing people why we were different, why we should have a place at the table.
And how do you think about times today where you have to get involved in things or do things yourself versus enabling people on your team to do them?
First, when you're used to doing everything, it's really hard to let go. And it still is sometimes, especially in the areas that I focus in. But you sort of have to empower people, and you have to almost view them as entrepreneurs within your organization.
So, you're in college or graduating from college. What advice would you have for yourself back when you were that age?
So I would say don't ever pick a career that is not your choice. Don't let someone else tell you what you should do because you're going to be the one having to do it for the rest of your life. Get an internship, and it doesn't matter where in that company you get placed. Again, I was placed in the shipping department, and I was very angry about it, but I did it, and I did the best shipping job I could do. When I spot talent in interns, it's because they take every job they're given and they just do the best they can.
Your brother has clearly been an amazing driving force with you behind the
Yes.
growth of Rebecca Minkoff. What's it like to work with your brother? What happens when you guys disagree?
There's brother-sister relationship, and then there's work. And you can't let the dynamics of one affect the other. And I'm not saying we're perfect, we're not, we definitely fight. One time he was like, you have to separate this because you can't just talk back to me because you're my sister. In our role here, I am the CEO, so I'm technically the boss. And I was like, shit, he's right. I think when you're talking to someone who's an employee, it's obviously different. I try and manage my criticism in a way that's not just like vomit.
What's the one thing that school taught you that's been really useful, and what's the one thing that hasn't been so useful?
So we'll take my high school as my school. One thing that high school taught me was there's no easy breaks. And just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean that someone else is gonna see it necessarily or give you just free rein. So to work hard. And the thing that was not useful was it does not help anyone to be mean, to be a bully, to be a diva, and to not grant someone the beingness that they are.
So have a couple of questions from students that we've handpicked.
Okay.
The first is from Madeline from Kent State. What do you look for in a person when hiring interns or employees?
I specifically look for a hunger in their eyes, that they're smart, that they are willing to do anything, that they're not above anything. And once they start, how quick they are to do things. And, maybe ask for the box to be wrapped, but they went one step further and, added a note card or, they're just always thinking about how I could take it and push it over the edge. And I tell people that are older, because the laws change with internships, you have to be in school. So I'll even tell adults, I'm like, just re-enroll in school, take a night class. You're in school technically, go get an internship. One day a week if you're working a job, I think it's important if you're either changing careers or transitioning or anything, you have to get on the job training.
And the second question we have is from Amanda from WashU.
Okay.
And her question is, how do you stay connected with your customers?
So I stay extremely connected with my customers in a variety of ways. I do about 30 trunk shows a year all over the country / world, where I'm meeting anywhere from 150 to sometimes 400 women. So that's direct physical contact, meeting them, seeing them, signing their bags, taking pictures. We talk to her on Instagram all the time. What do you think about this? What should the new jean color be this season? For Fashion Week, we did a contest on Polyvore where you could design a set and win a ticket to the show. So on all the platforms, we try and engage with her and have it be like, I'm your best friend and mentor, and keep that dialogue consistent.
We've been speaking for a while. Rebecca, I just wanted to say thank you so much for participating in university this year, for inspiring me, inspiring all of these students with just amazing lessons from your journey. I have a feeling that this is only the beginning. And for all of you out there, thank you so much for listening. Hope you took away a lot from Rebecca, and thanks for participating in university.
Thanks.